The Minnesota Lynx had their end-of-the-year exit interviews, and these stars can choose to make comments to the press, to everybody. In this case, Napheesa Collier spilling the tea on the WNBA, and Cathy Engelbert gets fully exposed.
The WNBA finds itself in chaos, and the storm is swirling directly around Commissioner Cathy Engelbert. What started as a routine exit interview turned into a full-scale explosion when Napheesa Collier boldly exposed Engelbert's leadership failures and her dismissive attitude toward players. Collier's words revealed a league suffering under arrogance, negligence, and an alarming lack of accountability. But the real spark that ignited outrage came when Collier shared Engelbert's shocking comments about Caitlin Clark, suggesting Clark should be grateful to the league, as if her star power and millions of loyal fans meant nothing.
But she made a comment in this in regards to what Cathy Engelbert said about Caitlin Clark, and it is jaw-dropping.
That tone-deaf remarks sent fans, players, and analysts into an uproar, highlighting just how disconnected Engelbert has become from the reality of her own league. What was supposed to be a moment of reflection for the season instead became proof that Engelbert is not only out of touch, but dangerously close to losing complete control.
How absolutely ludicrous this commissioner could be about the fact that Caitlin Clark needs the league more than the league needs Caitlin Clark. Are you mental?
Napheesa Collier's exit interview wasn't the usual end-of-season wrap-up. Instead, it turned into a thunderous call-out of WNBA leadership aimed squarely at Commissioner Cathy Engelbert. What should have been a standard press conference quickly became one of the most explosive moments of the year. As Collier ripped into the league's culture of neglect, inconsistency, and arrogance, she didn't speak in vague frustrations either. She laid out specifics, and every word carried the weight of years of players feeling dismissed and undervalued.
The WNBA is burning, and it looks like Cathy Engelbert's the one that lit it on fire.
Collier started with officiating, an issue that has plagued the WNBA for years. She described how inconsistency has gotten so bad that it threatens the very integrity of the sport. Night after night, players deal with unclear standards. Games slip into chaos, and fans leave frustrated. Coaches mention it before and after games, and the conversation has become unavoidable. Yet, according to Collier, league leadership continues to act like nothing is wrong. The only thing that remains consistent is fines for anyone brave enough to speak out. To Collier, this wasn't mismanagement, it was negligence.
The real threat to our league isn't money, it isn't ratings, or even missed calls, or even physical play. It's the lack of accountability from the league office. Since I've been in the league, you've heard the constant concerns about officiating, and it has now reached levels of inconsistency that plague our sport and undermine the integrity in which it operates.
Then came her most cutting example. Collier revealed that when she pressed Engelbert directly about fixing officiating, the commissioner dismissed her with a single sentence: "Only the losers complain about refs." That remark wasn't just dismissive, it was insulting for players who put their bodies on the line every night. The idea that their concerns about fairness and safety could be brushed aside so casually showed exactly how disconnected leadership has become. She highlighted Engelbert's attitude toward players in general, painting a picture of a commissioner who believes athletes should feel lucky just to have a league.
At Unrivaled this past February, I sat across from Cathy and asked how she planned to address the officiating issues in our league. Her response was, "Well, only the losers complain about the refs."
Engelbert, she said, regularly told players they should be grateful for what they've been given. The irony, of course, is that it's the players, not Engelbert, who are driving ratings, filling arenas, and keeping fans engaged. Instead of being thanked for carrying the sport, they are told to be thankful for simply existing within it.
I also asked how she planned to fix the fact that players like Caitlin, Angel, and Paige, who are clearly driving massive revenue for the league, are making so little for their first 4 years. Her response was, "Caitlin should be grateful she makes $16 million off the court, because without the platform that the WNBA gives her, she wouldn't make anything." And in that same conversation, she told me players should be on their knees thanking their lucky stars for the media rights deal that I got them.
What made Collier's words so powerful was her credibility. She isn't a fringe player looking for attention. She is a franchise star, an MVP candidate, and one of the most respected voices in the league. On top of that, she co-founded Unrivaled, giving her an even deeper understanding of what professional women's basketball could be if players were prioritized. This combination made her impossible to ignore, and when she spoke, it wasn't just her own frustration, it was the collective anger of athletes across the league.
I've finally grown tired. For too long, I have tried to have these conversations in private, but it's clear there is no intention of accepting there's a problem. The league has made it clear it isn't about innovation, it isn't about collaboration, it's about control and power.
By the time Collier finished, the message was clear. This wasn't a complaint about one bad call or one bad season. It was a demand for accountability from leadership that has ignored problems for far too long. Her words shook fans, rattled media, and left Engelbert scrambling. And yet, as explosive as Collier's criticism was, she had saved her most devastating revelation for later, one that involved the league's biggest star, Caitlin Clark.
We serve a league that has shown they think championship coaches and Hall of Fame players are dispensable, and that's fine, it's professional sports. But I will not stand quietly by and allow different standards to be applied at the league level. Thank you.
Wow. 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 She did not hold back. She just crushed Cathy Engelbert into dust. And what?
When Napheesa Collier brought Caitlin Clark into the conversation, the temperature in the room changed instantly. Criticism of officiating and league leadership was already damning. But Engelbert's attitude toward the WNBA's biggest star turned outrage into disbelief. According to Collier, Engelbert dismissed concerns about rookie salaries and revenue generation by saying Clark should be grateful to the league, claiming she wouldn't have anything without the WNBA platform. For players and fans alike, it was a shocking reminder of just how badly leadership misunderstands its own product. The reality tells a completely different story. Clark isn't relying on the league to stay relevant. The league is relying on her. Since her arrival, ratings have spiked, attendance has shattered records, and merchandise sales have exploded. Even teams playing against Clark benefit financially, with packed arenas and national attention. She has done more to move the needle in one season than decades of marketing campaigns ever achieved. Yet the commissioner had the audacity to imply Clark owed it all to the WNBA. Collier emphasized the disconnect by pointing out that Clark's rookie contract pays her a fraction of what she is worth, even though she is driving millions in revenue. Her endorsements and outside deals far surpass what the league provides, making Engelbert's "be grateful" comment not just insulting but laughably inaccurate. If Clark ever chose to walk away and join a competitor like Unrivaled, millions of fans would follow her overnight. That leverage makes her indispensable. Yet Engelbert continues to act as if the league holds all the cards. The insult wasn't just to Clark by dismissing her contributions. Engelbert dismissed the fans who have tuned in by the millions to watch her play. Those fans aren't showing up because of media rights negotiations or corporate buzzwords. They are there because Caitlin Clark brings excitement, drama, and star power to every game. Collier's decision to spotlight Engelbert's arrogance crystallized what many already felt. The commissioner has no idea how fragile the league's momentum truly is. Instead of embracing Clark as the cornerstone of a new era, Engelbert treated her like just another name on the roster. It was a display of arrogance that revealed why so many players have lost faith in her leadership. Collier's words served as both a defense of Clark and a warning to the league. Undervalue your brightest star, and you risk losing everything she has built for you. Engelbert's comments about Clark expose more than a personal grudge. They revealed a leadership style that diminishes every player's worth. And as Collier made clear, this wasn't an isolated slip of the tongue. It was part of a larger pattern of condescension and neglect that has poisoned the league's relationship with its athletes. The deeper Collier went, the clearer it became that Engelbert's leadership is not just flawed, it's actively damaging the WNBA from the inside. After addressing Caitlin Clark, Napheesa Collier widened her focus to a much larger problem: Cathy Engelbert's overall attitude toward players. According to Collier, the commissioner doesn't see athletes as the heartbeat of the league, but as employees, who should be thankful for whatever scraps they receive. That mindset, she argued, is not only outdated but dangerous for a league still fighting for mainstream respect, Collier described. how Engelbert often told players they should be grateful for the opportunities the WNBA provides. On the surface, it may sound like encouragement, but in reality, it was a slap in the face. Grateful for what? These athletes are the ones drawing fans into arenas, driving national television ratings, and creating the moments that trend across social media. The league's visibility has skyrocketed because of stars like Clark, Angel Reese, and Collier herself. Yet, instead of being valued for their impact, they are reminded to stay humble and silent. She also exposed Engelbert's lack of empathy during moments of vulnerability. Injuries are a harsh reality of professional sports, and Collier revealed how countless teammates and even players from other franchises reached out with messages of support during her recovery. Engelbert, however, never picked up the phone. Not one call, not one text, not even a brief acknowledgement. The only response came secondhand from her deputy, who downplayed the role of physical play in injuries altogether. For Collier, that indifference wasn't just frustrating. It was proof of a leader who doesn't value the humanity of her athletes. The hypocrisy became glaring when Collier compared Engelbert's behavior to her husband's leadership of another league. Despite the pressures of his own responsibilities, he consistently takes the time to personally check in on players facing injuries. If he can balance that with running a professional organization, why can't the WNBA commissioner manage even basic gestures of support? To Collier, the answer was simple. Engelbert doesn't see it as her job. But for players who dedicate their careers to building the league's future, it should be the bare minimum. Collier went further, accusing Engelbert of ruling through suppression rather than collaboration. When athletes speak up about real issues, they're fined. When coaches raise questions about officiating, they're silenced. Instead of encouraging open dialogue, leadership chooses control. The commissioner's approach has created an environment where players feel voiceless, expected to accept poor treatment, and keep quiet in the name of sustainability. By sharing these stories, Collier turned whispers into undeniable evidence. Fans no longer had to speculate about Engelbert's disconnect. They could see it clearly through Collier's testimony. And for players across the league, her words echoed what they had felt for years, that the WNBA's leadership doesn't truly respect them. But Collier's criticism wasn't finished. If Engelbert's attitude was bad enough, the state of officiating and the league's unwillingness to protect its players revealed just how dangerous that neglect has become. And as Collier made clear, ignoring it any longer could push the WNBA to the brink. Napheesa Collier didn't just call out Engelbert's arrogance. She exposed the WNBA's most urgent crisis, officiating and player safety. For years, fans and athletes have complained about inconsistent refereeing, reckless physical play, and a league office that refuses to address the problem. Collier laid it out bluntly. The officiating isn't just sloppy. It's undermining the integrity of the sport and endangering the very players who keep the league alive. She explained how every night, coaches and players voice concerns about missed calls and uneven standards. Fans see it too, flooding social media with outrage after games spiral out of control. Instead of listening, Engelbert's leadership ignores the problem and punishes anyone who dares to speak up. Collier labeled that negligence, a refusal to acknowledge reality. While players are left absorbing the consequences on the court, this season made the issue impossible to deny. Caitlin Clark's rookie year turned into a nightly highlight reel of hard hits and borderline dirty fouls, many of which went uncalled. Collier herself, along with stars like Sophie Cunningham, dealt with injuries that could have been avoided if referees kept tighter control of games. Yet Engelbert's office doubled down, insisting physical play wasn't the problem. For players, that denial was more dangerous than the fouls themselves. Even respected coaches like Becky Hammon weighed in, noting that if some of these fouls happened in the NBA, they would have triggered full-on fights. The comparison drove Collier's point home. This isn't about toughness, it's about a lack of regulation. The NBA polices its product to protect both competitiveness and safety, while the WNBA allows reckless play to run unchecked. The difference isn't skill or talent, it's leadership. The consequences have been devastating. Losing players like Clark, Collier, or Cunningham to injury doesn't just hurt teams, it hurts the entire league. Fans tune in to see stars, not to watch them sit sidelined because officials lost control of the game. Ratings dip, arenas empty, and the product suffers. Collier warned that if leadership continues to ignore this crisis, the WNBA risks alienating its fan base permanently. Once trust in the fairness of the game is gone, it's nearly impossible to restore. What made her criticism sting even more was the truth behind it. The league isn't failing because it lacks talent or excitement. It's failing because the people in charge refuse to act. By dismissing complaints and punishing players instead of fixing problems, Engelbert has allowed chaos to become normal. For Collier, the danger was clear. A league that refuses to protect its stars is sabotaging itself from within, and that message carried a deeper implication. If Engelbert won't take responsibility, players may start looking elsewhere for leadership that values them. That possibility, a rival platform rising in strength, was the next explosive thread Collier pulled. As Collier's words spread, one reality made them even more explosive. She isn't just a WNBA star. She's also the co-founder of Unrivaled, the upstart league set to compete for talent, attention, and dollars. That dual role meant every criticism of Cathy Engelbert carried double weight. Was she simply venting frustration at poor leadership, or was she drawing a line in the sand between the old system and a new player-driven model? Either way, the conflict highlighted how fragile Engelbert's grip on the league truly is. Critics wasted no time questioning Collier's motives. They argued that by exposing Engelbert's arrogance and negligence, she was also boosting her own league. Every time she pointed out how undervalued players feel, Unrivaled looked more like a safe haven. Every time she mentioned Engelbert's dismissiveness, Unrivaled's promise of collaboration sounded louder. But what her critics failed to realize is that Collier didn't invent these complaints. She simply amplified the frustrations players and fans have voiced for years. The threat of Unrivaled goes far beyond rhetoric. For decades, the WNBA had no true competition, giving leadership the comfort to ignore calls for change. Now, a league created by players themselves looms as an alternative. If even a handful of stars like Clark Reese or Collier shifted their loyalty, sponsors and viewers would follow. That possibility, once unthinkable, is suddenly real. And it has Engelbert on the defensive. Collier's decision to speak out publicly added urgency to the rivalry. It wasn't just about airing grievances anymore. It was about showing the basketball world that the WNBA is not the only stage available. The message was clear. Players now have a choice. And choice means leverage. For Engelbert, that shift is dangerous, because it forces accountability in a league where players have long felt powerless. The existence of Unrivaled also exposes the WNBA's biggest weakness: its reliance on suppressing voices rather than empowering them. Engelbert's approach has been to find players who speak up, but Collier flipped that tactic on its head. By going public and tying her complaints to her new league's vision, she turned fines into fuel, strengthening the idea that Unrivaled might offer what the WNBA refuses to provide: respect, safety, and a genuine partnership between players and leadership. In the end, Collier's words blurred the line between critique and revolution. Whether her ultimate goal was reforming the WNBA or positioning Unrivaled as its successor, she left Engelbert with a reality she could no longer deny. The monopoly is broken. The WNBA can no longer assume players have nowhere else to go. And with that revelation, Engelbert's last shield, the claim that she had secured financial stability through media rights, was about to be ripped away. When cornered by criticism, Cathy Engelbert often points to the WNBA's media rights deal as proof of her success. In her view, that agreement represents growth, stability, and her ability to lead the league into a prosperous future. But Napheesa Collier shattered that illusion, exposing how little credit Engelbert truly deserves and how much the league's lifeline actually depends on outside forces. Collier explained that Engelbert regularly reminded players to be thankful for the television package she claimed to have secured, yet behind the scenes, it was NBA Commissioner Adam Silver who pushed networks to accept WNBA games as part of a larger NBA broadcast deal. According to Collier, networks didn't line up to showcase the WNBA because of Engelbert's negotiations. They did it because they wanted the NBA and had no choice but to take the WNBA as part of the package. That reality undercut Engelbert's self-congratulations and made her look less like a deal maker and more like someone taking credit for someone else's work. Even more damaging was the fact that players themselves, especially Caitlin Clark, were the real drivers of value. Clark's rookie season created unprecedented demand. Ratings soared, arenas sold out, and merchandise flew off shelves. Her presence alone convinced sponsors and broadcasters that the WNBA had become a must-carry property. Without her, no television deal could have commanded the same attention. Yet Engelbert brushed aside Clark's influence, choosing instead to boast about her own leadership. To Collier and many others, this was the height of arrogance. Money remains the core of the conflict. Rookie contracts lock stars like Clark into salaries far below their market worth, even as they generate millions for the league. When confronted with that imbalance, Engelbert doubled down, suggesting Clark should be grateful for her endorsement deals outside the league. Two players. That response revealed a commissioner who sees outside income as a replacement for fair pay, not a supplement. It reinforced the perception that Engelbert is more concerned with optics than with creating a sustainable system where players are truly valued. Collier warned that this illusion of progress is dangerous. A media rights deal means little if players feel dismissed, if officiating remains broken, and if stars are sidelined by injuries that leadership refuses to address. Fans may not care about the fine print of broadcast contracts, but they do notice when their favorite players are ignored or mistreated. The very ratings Engelbert brags about could collapse if Clark or other stars ever decide to take their talents elsewhere. By exposing the truth behind the money, Collier stripped away Engelbert's strongest defense. The commissioner's favorite talking point was revealed to be hollow. Built on the efforts of the NBA and the drawing power of players, she continually did. And once that illusion crumbled, the focus turned to something Engelbert could no longer control: the growing revolt among players and coaches demanding real accountability. By the time Napheesa Collier finished her fiery address, it was clear this was no longer about one player versus the commissioner. Her words tapped into a much larger frustration boiling across the WNBA. Players and coaches have grown tired of fines, tired of being silenced, and tired of a league office that refuses to value its athletes. What Collier ignited was the outline of a full-blown player revolt. The signs had already been building. Cheryl Reeve, one of the most respected coaches in the league, was suspended after speaking out in defense of her players. Instead of sparking reflection at the top, Engelbert's office doubled down, choosing punishment over dialogue. That decision sent shockwaves through locker rooms across the league. If a championship-winning coach could be treated as disposable, what chance did the average player have of being heard? Collier's comments connected directly to that anger. She wasn't just speaking for herself, she was giving voice to athletes across teams who feel the league has no interest in collaboration. The repeated fines for players who dare to criticize officiating have only deepened the resentment. For years, the WNBA operated under the assumption that athletes had no alternative, that they would tolerate neglect because the league was their only platform. But with Unrivaled emerging as a real competitor, that assumption no longer holds. Players now have leverage, and Engelbert's inability to adapt is fueling the very rebellion she hoped to suppress. Fans, too, are playing a role in this revolt. Social media has become a megaphone for their frustration. Every missed call, every reckless foul against stars like Caitlin Clark, and every injury that sidelines key players amplifies the perception that the WNBA is failing its own product. Collier's honesty gave those fans a voice, validating what they had been shouting all season. With fans and players aligned, the pressure on Engelbert has never been greater. The revolt isn't just emotional, it's structural. When athletes feel ignored by leadership, trust erodes. When coaches are suspended for defending their players, credibility collapses. And when stars are dismissed as grateful beneficiaries instead of central to the league's survival, loyalty begins to fade. Collier's revelations crystallize these fractures, showing that the WNBA's problems aren't isolated incidents, but symptoms of a failing system at the top. Engelbert now faces a crisis she cannot silence with fines. Her players are openly questioning her competence. Coaches are risking punishment to defend them, and fans are turning their frustration into public campaigns. The revolt has already begun, and unless drastic changes are made, it could transform into something even more dramatic: a demand for Engelbert's removal. That possibility leads directly to the next chapter of this saga, because if players and fans continue to push back, The NBA itself may be forced to step in. And once Adam Silver's influence enters the conversation, Engelbert's future as commissioner could hang by a thread. By the time Napheesa Collier finished tearing down the curtain around Cathy Engelbert's leadership, the conversation had shifted from frustration to action. The growing revolt among players, coaches, and fans had reached a boiling point, and whispers of Engelbert's removal turned into loud demands. Collier's words weren't just an expose, they were a rallying cry for accountability. And the next logical question became unavoidable. Should Engelbert remain commissioner of the WNBA? The call for removal isn't without precedent. In professional sports, when leadership fails to protect players, damages the product, and alienates its own stars, change becomes inevitable. Engelbert has shown no intention of correcting course. Instead, she has dismissed officiating concerns, downplayed player safety, and insulted athletes by telling them to be grateful for what little they have. Collier's revelations only confirmed what many already believed. The commissioner is unfit to guide the league forward. This is where Adam Silver's name enters the picture. As commissioner of the NBA, Silver holds immense influence over the WNBA's stability. The league's financial health and media rights are directly tied to NBA partnerships, giving him leverage that Engelbert cannot ignore. According to reports, Silver himself played a crucial role in ensuring that networks carried WNBA games by bundling them with NBA rights. That reality makes Engelbert's boast about securing media deals ring hollow and strengthens the argument that the NBA, not her, is keeping the league afloat. If the WNBA continues to stumble under Engelbert's watch, Silver may have no choice but to intervene. The NBA cannot afford for its sister league to spiral when its most marketable star, Caitlin Clark, is already generating historic interest. Every injury, every officiating controversy, and every dismissive remark risks driving fans away, undoing the momentum Clark and other young stars have created. For Silver and NBA owners, the cost of leaving Engelbert in place may soon outweigh the risks of removing her. The situation has become dire enough that fans are openly discussing a vote of no confidence. Echoing the language once used in politics and even pop culture references like Star Wars, that imagery captures the reality of Engelbert's situation. She is a leader who has lost the trust of those she is supposed to serve. Collier's public testimony only accelerated that collapse of confidence. At this point, the commissioner's strongest defense, her ability to secure stability, has been exposed as nothing more than smoke and mirrors. Players are rebelling, coaches are furious, and fans are disillusioned. With each passing day, Engelbert's position grows weaker, and the pressure on the NBA to step in grows stronger. The WNBA stands at a crossroads. Either Engelbert continues to drag the league through chaos, or decisive action is taken to remove her and rebuild trust from the ground up. And with Collier's words still echoing, the demand for change has become louder than ever, leaving Engelbert with no safe ground to stand on. Napheesa Collier's words have left the WNBA shaken, and Cathy Engelbert stands at the center of the storm. What began as a season-ending interview spiraled into a devastating indictment of leadership. Dismissive comments about officiating, silence during player injuries, arrogance toward athletes, and perhaps most damaging of all, the blatant disrespect toward Caitlin Clark. Collier exposed a commissioner more interested in control and self-congratulation than in protecting players or growing the game. The fallout is clear. Players are uniting, coaches are frustrated, and fans are losing patience. With Unrivaled rising as a legitimate alternative, Engelbert's dismissive tone could drive stars and supporters elsewhere. For the WNBA, the stakes have never been higher. Unless real change comes, the league risks losing not only its brightest star, but its future altogether. The question now is simple. Will Engelbert survive the storm she created, or will her downfall become inevitable?